about the patriotism and the heroics of the people that lost their lives that day. It's really, what can we do to prevent that from ever happening again? And I'm kind of surprised. You know, I come from Western Pennsylvania, and people look at things in maybe a little different fashion. When I'm not down here in Washington, D.C., amid all these brains and all the intelligence, and you get back home and you talk to people, if I were to say to you, Lieutenant Colonel Wood, what does 9/11 mean to you?
This last 9/11?
Just 9/11. Like I would say, December 7th. What does December 7th? 9/11 usually means...
It's an attack upon the United States of America.
Mr. Nordstrom.
The same.
Ms. Lamb.
The same.
Ms. Ambassador.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, so if you can all connect the dots right here, why in the heck did it take so long for all these highly briefed and intelligent people to try and figure out that it actually wasn't a 15-minute YouTube video? It actually was a 9/11 event, a terrorist attack? Now, I don't know that this stuff about what's classified and not classified is getting confusing for me, because I sat in a members-only briefing, and Mr. Chairman, I asked, and this is on September the 20th, with Secretary Clinton and some other personnel. Is that something we're allowed to talk about or not allowed to talk about?
If it was in a classified setting, the only thing that I would think would be appropriate is any inconsistencies you've seen in testimony today you could relate. Otherwise, the specifics, I couldn't judge it.
Okay. Well, it comes down to this. What caused this? And Ms. Lamb, I read through your testimony. It had to be horrible to sit there and watch it in real time, what was going on. And I read another account where this is kind of strange. That same night, this is about the ambassador. At 8:30 p.m., the ambassador said good night to a visiting Turkish diplomat outside the compound, and the streets are empty. But at 9:40 p.m., noises, gunfire, and an explosion were heard by the agents located in the TOC building or TOC in Building B. It is absolutely preposterous to me that we would watch Ambassador Rice go out and say what happened 5 days later, that I would sit in a briefing and it was, no, you have it all wrong. This is not a terrorist. This is a result of a 15-minute YouTube. Now, we are either in denial or, unfortunately, and I know some of the members are concerned because I got to tell you, it's very unfortunate that terrorists don't recognize that this is an election year. And they tend to just do what they want anytime they want to us. And when we have a weakened position around the world, and when we leave our embassies and our consuls and our people as unprotected as we do, and then we say, you know what, this is terrible because this is 27 days before an election. Why are we bringing it up now? And I ask the same question. Where the heck were we before 9/11, this 9/11? Why weren't we questioning it then? My goodness. 230 security incidents in Libya between June of 2011 and July of 2012. Of those attacks, 48 took place in Benghazi, 2 of which at the U.S. diplomatic compound and the scene of the September 11, 2012 terrorist attacks. And we are still saying, I think it's a result of the video that was on YouTube. And this is based on intelligence. Now, listen, I got to ask you, Ambassador Kennedy, because you say you couldn't possibly have had a different idea about it than Secretary Rice did when she went before the nation on September the 16th. I'm going to tell you, this thing smells. From every single end. Listen, it waddles like a duck and quacks like a duck. It's a duck. And for you to come in here and say, well, it was based on some of the things I knew, but I can't tell you all that I knew. We've got 4 Americans dead. And I got to tell you, it's very upsetting for me to go back home and look at those people in the eye, people who don't do what we do here with all the briefings and all the intelligence, just guys that go out and work every day and women that go out and work every day, and they can come home and they can figure it out. But we're still trying to figure it out and piece it together, and you watch it in real time. And the account wasn't there. The ambassador is that night saying goodbye to a Turkish friend outside the gates, and everything was quiet. But my goodness, those terrorists got a hold of that, or these Islamic extremists got a hold of that video, and between 8:30 and 9:40, they decided to just go crazy. And Africa's on fire. And Mr. Nordstrom, thank you for pointing out, as Mr. Romney did, that hope is not a strategy. And I feel sorry for you and Lieutenant Colonel Wood to have to come here because it is you who are on the ground. You're not watching in some faraway room in real time. Your people are there in real time. We've watched our colleagues be killed. And the question doesn't become, what is it that we didn't know? It is because we have become lax. We have dumbed down. We've turned down the dial. You know, by the way, At the same time, and I know it's about the money to some degree, right? Although I saw a whole list of all the things that we were able to do to you. Apparently, it wasn't for the money there. Did you know that at the embassy in Vienna in early May, we did a beautiful, beautiful presentation of the embassy going green. Spent $101,000, $110,000 on a little electrical thing to plug the cars in. Had 2 volts there. Had 100 people there. We're sipping champagne and eating hors d'oeuvres. And my goodness, my goodness. On September 11th, we had a tough day and a couple bumps in the road.
I thank the gentleman.
I got to tell you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. I know I'm going over, but the people of America should be outraged to have to sit here and listen to what we're saying and say, what are we doing to protect the other embassies and our personnel on the right? They are true patriots. But you know what they rely on? The State Department for their security. And we let them down.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chairman,
there was no question there, Ambassador. I perceive no question. The gentleman felt he had no question. With that, we go to the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Ross.
Thank you. Mr. Nordstrom, earlier in your testimony, you were discussing your recollection of the conversation that you had had with 2 agents in the room regarding the denial of the extension of the SST. Now, and it was your understanding that you were not to request an extension at that point. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And who was on the other end of the line that told you that?
I was on the telephone call with Das Lamb.
Okay. Was Ms. Lamb on the phone call with you?
That is Das Lamb. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So she did tell you that.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, she just the other day in an interview with the committee indicated that on your July 9th cable to Washington requesting security personnel, you didn't formally request an SST extension. In fact, you just made a recommendation. Can you explain if there's a difference between recommendation or request?
I and Post felt that was a pretty clear request for resources.
Had you done it before with the idea that it was a request?
I believe it was also titled Request for Continued TDY Staffing.
And it was a denial of that extension?
Well, actually, we never actually received a response.
Other than that phone conference? Other than that phone conference that you were on?
Correct. Okay. We never received a response to the
And as a result of that phone conference where you were denied, did you seek any further effort to follow up or make a re-request?
I believe, actually, to clarify, the telephone call was prior to sending in the cable. What we decided, since we continued to get resistance, instead of specifically asking for SST or MSD or whatever, we just said, you know what, give us the 13 bodies, wherever you come from, and that's the way in which we crafted the cable.
Now, Mrs. Lamb, you testified in an interview with this committee that you trusted your RSOs in the field, such as Mr. Nordstrom. Now, how do you square that statement with you telling Mr. Nordstrom that you would not support an extension of the SST?
The cable that he sent in indicated that any of the categories.
But before the cable was the phone conversation.
That's correct.
And you wouldn't support his request or his recommendation at that time?
Because we had Department of State diplomatic security assets that could do the same functions of the remaining.
And that was explained to him as well?
Yes, sir.
Now, Lieutenant Colonel Wood, I understand that you were the senior officer of the SST team. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And do you have any reason to believe that if you had to go up your chain of command at AFRICOM for a request from the State Department that they extend the tour of duty of an SST, that your chain of command would not grant that?
Absolutely. General Ham was fully supportive of extending the SST as long as they felt they needed them.
So the resources were available for the SST?
Absolutely.
And had they been there, they would have made a difference, would they not?
They made a difference every day they were there when I was there, sir. They were a deterrent effect.
Thank you. Now, Ambassador Kennedy, just real quickly, and everybody's been beating this, and I understand it, but I just want to reconcile it in my own mind. Here we've got the official statement of the State Department that this protest, this attack, was all as a result of a video that was controversial, but yet the next day the President of Libya comes out and says, well, it was not as a result of a controversial video. In fact, he had no doubt that it was an act of terrorism. And so I guess my question is that the Libyan intelligence so superior to the American intelligence that they knew within 24 hours that it was a terrorist attack, and within 6 days we're still saying that it was a result of a video?
Mr. Ross, I'm going to take a liberty here, and I'm going to correct one point, if I might. You asked the Colonel, would his team have made a difference?
No, sir, you're in my time right here, so I have to control this.
His team was not.
The gentleman from Florida controls the time for the questions he wishes to ask.
Very good, sir.
So the intelligence between the Libyans and the Americans just wasn't the same. Apparently, they were more superior. Now, if they were more superior in their intelligence, and you testified just earlier that you were still gathering information, that's why you didn't say it was officially a terrorist attack, then why in the world did you say it was anything at all when you put Jay Carney out there and Ambassador Rice to say that this is a result of an inflammatory reaction to a controversial film? Sir, it begs the question, what happened? Was it as a result of political pressure trumping professional protocol? Was it not?
Mr. Ross, I have been a career Foreign Service officer for 39 years. I have served every president since Richard Nixon.
And
I have directly served 6 Secretaries of State, Democratic and Republican. On my honor, none political pressure was applied to me in this case by anyone in the State Department, at the National Security Council, or at the White House.
Then it was a professional protocol malpractice. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman.